Hey everybody, welcome to Viking Creative Studios. In today's review, we're going to be talking about a new product I've had for a few weeks now, the GVM 31-inch motion slider. And we're going to be going over my real-world thoughts and basically using this in traveling conditions as well as outside and in the studio since I've had enough time to test it out. Okay, so I've actually had this product now for a few weeks and I've used it in a variety of different situations. So ultimately, I kind of want to go over some specs, but mostly real-world thoughts. What I really think about this: is it something that's worth the price, versus getting a different competitor, or what can you actually use it for, and things like that. So first off, I want to say the reason I actually even got this slider was I did want something motion-based. I didn't want something by hand sliding or anything like that. And primarily that was because I wasn't looking to do video with this product at all. I was actually getting it for time lapses. I've been doing more and more time lapses, and after you do so many time lapses and you get all the filters and things like that, the real next step into improving your time lapse is by adding motion. So I did use a Zhiyun crane with the time lapse capability and have it pan, but I wanted some physical motion to get that change in parallax and stuff for foreground subjects and really make the images and the time lapses look great. So motion time-lapse slider is really the only way to do it. I was originally looking at a do-it-yourself project and to build one, and again, it's not commercially made, so it's going to have different issues you have to kind of work out and put in the time to build, was going to cost me approximately $250. I got this slider for $350. Compared to anything else on the market, that is a steal. The next thing really that's even in the same ballpark as this is the Rhino slider with the arc system, and that you're talking like $1,800 as a starting price. They do have a couple different models of the GVM slider. They have a 48-inch one, which is 4 feet. They have the 31-inch one. I think they also have something smaller. I think it's like 20 inches or so. They also make hand sliding ones, but we're going to stick with talking about the motion stuff for this review. So with this particular slider, I didn't want to get the 4-foot one because it just seems so big, and traveling and convenience is really important. I know if I got the 4-foot one, it would probably be really great with studio work, but in traveling and carrying it out into a field or hiking and things like that, it's just not going to happen. I wouldn't end up using it, and it wouldn't be practical. So having something a little bit smaller, 31 inches is still huge. I think suited my needs a little bit better, so you kind of have to go by what you plan on using it for. Now, like I said, I was doing this for time lapses originally, and I got the ball head just like everyone else on here. Everybody makes a comment about the name of the product, so I'm not going to do all the same stuff that everyone else is doing, but I just want to cover the basics and the good things and bad things that I found about the slider. First of all, the good things is there's a carbon fiber model and an aluminum model. The carbon fiber one is pretty light. It's a little heavier than I originally thought because of the motor. It's got a nice beefy motor for pushing the camera along. But the aluminum one, and specs-wise, was twice the weight of the carbon fiber. So getting a carbon fiber model is definitely, if you're planning on carrying this thing around or traveling with it, is definitely worth it. The aluminum one, you can get like a bigger slider for the same price, but again, I didn't want to get that bigger slider. I wanted this. So having the lightweight and also this size was just perfect for me. Another functionality that I didn't really care about originally when looking to possibly get a motion slider was getting the parallax effect, where the camera will auto-rotate based on where it is in position. I was originally planning, like I said, just doing time lapses, and I just wanted a consistent motion from one end to the other, and that was really it. Well, I will say, after researching this product and then actually having hands-on, having the option for the parallax effect and the panning shots on here, where you can set this bar to adjust it, is a game changer. It is a huge function to have, and it's almost something I use every time I use this product now. So it's something that's definitely worth having. Even though I didn't originally even care about it, I can really appreciate having those options when using the slider. It's definitely a game changer. Battery life, I mean, it works pretty good. It's not ridiculously good. You can use it for a few hours, no problem. It's got the big, huge camcorder batteries from Sony. You can get a bunch of them on Amazon. So far, I've just got the stock one. I've run it out for a few hours, and it definitely lasts, but it's not like Zhiyun crane batteries where you're going to get 12, 15, 24 hours out of a set of batteries. You're going to run this thing probably 6 to 8 hours, and it's going to be depleted, so you do need to charge it. It does take a little while to charge as well, so you got to leave it on the charger for a few hours, but you know, it's pretty good to go. And so far I haven't had a problem where I've been in the field and actually like, oh man, I wish I had another battery. It's been good enough, especially for time lapses. I'm usually running my stuff for anywhere from a half hour to 2 hours, so this was definitely good enough for what I needed. The actual stuff that I like about it is that it's pretty heavy duty. For being such a cheap slider, around $350, it's built like a tank. It's the carbon fiber, the metal, everything, the screws, the legs, everything on it is solidly built, and I'm pretty happy with the construction of it. It's not cheap. It doesn't feel like a cheap product from like China or anything like that, which is really nice. Now, there's a few things I don't really like about it. One is, as soon as you turn this on, as you can see with it off right now, I can move this motor around no problem, and I can almost use it like a hand slider. But the second you actually turn the device on, it will auto brakes, which is a good thing and a bad thing. And I think that's really designed to be so when it's set on an incline, it kind of holds itself up based on the power of the motor. But as soon as you flip that switch, the power is engaged. So that's one of the things I've noticed that I wasn't quite expecting. Now, once you turn it on, it's pretty easy to set up. You got to, select your in points and your out points and that kind of stuff. But one thing I really do not like about the slider is every single time you turn it off, it actually doesn't have any kind of memory capability. It automatically forgets your beginning and end point. So if you turn it off, every single time you turn it back on, you have to set up that end point or beginning point, because if not, it doesn't know the end of the slider, and it will just kind of keep running, and you'll burn your motor out and you'll ruin your belt. So you got to always, every single time you use it, you got to set a beginning and end point. That is kind of a pain. That is the worst part about this slider, in my opinion. But, it doesn't take too long to do, and then once you start setting it up, it's even faster. So one of the things, a little tip and trick here of what I do is, once I set everything up, I got the camera mounted, I do kind of bring it sort of toward one of the ends, so that way I can then just slide it over a little bit, start that as my beginning point, and then slide it all the way to the other side to set my end point. Like I said, it has time-lapse functionality and also video capability. The parallax effect is helpful for time lapses, but it's really nice for video. For video, you can have it pan and keep that center subject and get some unbelievably gorgeous shots that, like I said, you're not getting with any other piece of gear consistently for less than a couple $1,000s. It's really a game changer. This thing can give you some unbelievable B-roll and product shots consistently every time. I've used the hand sliders before, and it's an art and a skill, and you actually have to take your time and try to make it as smooth as possible. This thing, it does all the hard work for you, and it makes it the same every single time. So it works really, really great for that. Another functionality that I wasn't even anticipating on here was it does move, shoot, is it shoot, move, shoot for time lapses. So what it does is it moves, it takes a shot, it moves, it takes a shot, it moves, it takes a shot, and you can set up how far you want it to move. So I mean, you could technically set it up so it does 1 shot, 2 shot, 3 shot. Obviously that wouldn't work very well for a time lapse, but you can set, what I'm saying is, the parameters of how far you want it to go. That is something I'll get into in a minute, because there are some features on that I don't like. But the stop, move, shoot kind of thing is really nice, because if you're doing, say, like night starscapes and things like that, where you need to have the shutter for a long period of time, it's going to stop, take a 30-second exposure, move again, stop, take another 30-second exposure. So it allows you to do motion long exposure time lapses, which is something you would not be able to do with like a do-it-yourself project where the slider would be constantly moving very slowly. You would be able to do probably regular time lapses, but it would still get some more blur in there. Having a stop for every single shot makes your time lapses look that much more professional and gives you that many more options. It's really great. As far as the parameters, the video stuff is pretty straightforward. Like I said, you set your beginning and your end points, move it around. You can manually do it, so if you don't even want to start it and set up an end point, and you just want to literally hit the button until it stops for a quick shot, you can do that as well, which is what I use most of the time for run and gun style filming. But it does have the option to auto loop, which is really nice. One of the things I've actually used the video for the auto loop with is for live streaming. Set it up on a nice slow speed and done live streaming. Even if I use my phone or a camera, it doesn't matter. It'll just keep going back and forth nice and slow, and it just makes your videos for your live streams or your video productions that much better looking. I've done interview style with the auto loop, and it is a game changer. Like I said, it really steps up your quality, and it looks beautiful. Back to the time-lapse stuff, since this is why I got it. It is a little bit of a learning curve to set up the correct menu settings on here. So when you turn it on, we're going to go right into time-lapse. It gives you a couple different options. You have interval, then you have time-lapse, stop time, and the photo count. It also gives you an option for auto loop or not. Interval is not photo interval like you would think on a camera. So when you're setting up a time-lapse on a camera or intervalometer, it's how often does it take a shot? Every 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever. That is not what it is. The interval on this actually has to do with the spacing between each shot. Same thing with the time-lapse option. Again, that has to do with spacing. The stop time is your actual interval time for each shot. So if you have it set for 30 seconds, then you need a stop time of at least 30 seconds, obviously, for it to do that. Photo count, obviously, that's how many photos it's set up to take. You can basically put that as high as you want. You can set it with the endpoint, so that way even it doesn't matter. You're not going to run out. It'll just keep shooting. Like with time lapses, you're better to have too much than not enough. Also, when you go in and you hit start, it does give you a speed option as well. So again, another third option for speed affects the distance between travel. So if you want this thing to go the minimum distance for every single shot to get as many photos as possible, you have to put your interval, your time lapse, and your speed as low as you can go. That'll give you a lot of shots, over 1,000. But if you adjust any of those parameters, it increases the distance every single shot takes. And that took me forever to figure out, since there was no instruction. I didn't see any videos on that at all. And it was kind of a pain in the ass, to be honest. Now, it does actually work like a remote shutter, since it comes with all the different cables based on whatever camera you're using and plugs directly into its camera slot and triggers the camera through this device, which is something that I wasn't used to doing. I was using a time-lapse app on Sony cameras before, and I had no problem with it, but it was kind of janky, and I wanted something like this that would actually trigger it. One thing I did have a problem with was if you want to run a really long time-lapse on a Sony camera, you have to plug in an external battery, because the batteries on the Sony cameras go pretty quick. So during a regular hour, 2-hour time lapse, you'll be fine with the standard batteries. But if you want to run something for 6 hours or 8 hours, the camera will die first. So in order to prevent that from happening, Sony has USB charging built in, so you can plug in a camera to basically off a battery bank like this to charge your camera as it's using it. So it'll just it'll run this basically as a battery. I didn't even think about this when buying it, because I do that all the time when I put my camera on a tripod. I hook up the battery and I just let it run, so I know the battery's not going to die. Well, this remote plugs in to that same slot on the camera. So I was having a problem where I had to kind of decide if I wanted to use the motion slider for a time-lapse. You could not use an external battery, because the slot on the camera, the USB port, was taken up by this being the trigger. It kind of put me in a dilemma where I was like, oh man, it's like either one or the other, external battery or motion slider. Come up with a solution for it. So I ended up ordering one of these things, and this is specifically, we're talking about Sony cameras here, but basically it is a dummy battery that plugs. You take your regular battery out of your camera, and you plug this in, and it has 2 USB ports on the back here. So this wire plugs in as a dummy battery, and you can plug 1 or 2 ends into an external battery. This is a big external battery. It's like 20,000 milliamp hours. You can plug in both, and it gives even more stable power. Or if you have multiple battery banks, I can plug one into one battery bank and one into the other, and it will power the camera through the battery port, not the USB port. So by doing that, it allows me to use this in the USB slot to do time-lapse, to trigger the time-lapse shots, and this into the battery port to power the camera. With that setup, I can run probably a time-lapse for days, no problem, like straight. If I wanted to do 30 minute or whatever exposures and let it run for 4 or 5 days, I could do that if I wanted to with this setup, which is remarkable. I think that, well, I don't know, with the slider, actually, this battery, like I said, won't last that long, but you know what I mean. It does also have a basically a DC in, so you can get an external power source on here. So technically, yeah, you could do it. I don't have the power adapter. It's something I want to order. It does come with this little strap as well, which is, it doesn't sound very nice, like, oh, who cares? But it's nice if you have a tripod or something, you can hang the remote right on it, and it's just something you don't have to leave on the ground, which was nice for them thinking about it. Using it, it was pretty good. Another thing I was kind of concerned about was, so since it has this parallax bar in here to turn the camera for the panorama or the parallax shots, I was like, oh man, how hard is it going to be to center this when I want to do straight shots? It actually has tiny measurements on the side with very detailed lines, so you can get it exact if you want. You just have to hold it there. The feet are pretty stable. I've used it on different rocks and uneven surfaces, so the fact they're adjustable is pretty handy. I don't think in most cases you'll need them too much, but the fact that it has it is, again, just a nice function to have. You know, if you need just 1 foot or something like that, it comes in real handy. The fact that it has, basically, it has mounting all over the different rails here for tripods. You have them on the sides, you have them on the bottom. On the sides, you also have several in the middle plate here. So you can do a bunch of different things. Usually what I'll do is I'll put a tripod on one end and I'll kind of angle it. Now that was the other problem I wasn't sure, because I couldn't find any videos on about this slider, was, is it powerful enough to handle incline 45 degrees or vertical shooting? I've actually tested it with this A7 II with the dual battery grip. So it's a pretty heavy rig here. This isn't, you know, it's like a little bigger than your average DSLR as of right now. And it handled the vertical stuff no problem, so it does work. And because it has that auto braking on the motor, it'll hold itself up the entire way down or up or whatever. It's not going to fall, which is really nice. It does work really great. The motor's pretty heavy duty and pretty strong, and I don't have any problems with that. The remote has the 1/4 screw in the bottom, which comes in handy if you have like a little tabletop tripod and you want to position it. You can do that as well. All in all, this product works fantastic. It's worth the money, hands down. For $350 and change, it is a steal compared to a Rhino slider. It does basically everything those other sliders can do and more. It's fantastic. Some other sliders that are priced in this range do not come with the parallax effect bar here that allows you to shift your plane of focus during the motion. And I will say that with using this with video, it is extremely handy to have that, and you can take your shots from okay to next level with this. This is about as professional as you can get with a enthusiast price point, and I would definitely recommend it all day long. If you guys have any other questions, you can leave them down below the comments, but I wanted to talk about just the real worldness that I've actually used this product in the field now. I haven't had any single problems except for the external power issue, which is not even a fault of the slider. It's just more of a Sony design. The only other real complaint that I have is that it has no memory in the controller to save your beginning and end points, even if you leave the battery attached. Once you turn it off, it forgets it. And just lack of instruction maybe for the time-lapse settings, because that's more of an advanced thing. Knowing what interval meant, it's pretty standard across the industry that interval is the amount of time between shots for a time lapse, but for this it was not, so that threw me way off, and I wish I had had a little bit more instruction with the time lapse settings. But other than that, it works. It does a great job. The carbon fiber design looks beautiful and holds up really well. It's something that is definitely something that is going to add production value to any project you're working on, whether it's a time lapse or video. So it's something that if you're looking for a piece of gear like this, it's pretty hard to beat at that price point. So I guess that's going to be it, guys. Thanks for watching. If you guys have any other questions, you can leave it down below. Shoot me a message. I'm on Instagram. All those links are down below. And I will see you guys soon in another video.